My name is not important, though once upon a time it was whispered with love. For years, I lived in this house alone, tending to my garden, balancing my checkbook with neat precision, and brewing tea at the same hour each evening. I lived simply but never without dignity. My bills were paid on time, my pantry never empty, and though my children rarely visited, I told myself they were busy building lives of their own. Then, one Sunday afternoon, they arrived together, smiles too wide, voices dripping with concern. "Mom," my eldest began, "we've been talking. We think it's time we helped you manage your finances." His words were wrapped in silk, but I felt a thread of unease tug inside me. Still, when my daughter chimed in, stroking my arm with mock gentleness, I wanted so desperately to believe them. Perhaps, I thought, this was love returning to me. Perhaps I had raised them right after all. They spoke of protecting me from mistakes, guarding me from dangers I hadn't seen. I hesitated, pride pricking at me, but their persistence felt warm, almost flattering. How many parents dream of children stepping in so selflessly? I allowed myself to soften, though something inside whispered caution. Their laughter filled the kitchen as they unpacked bags, settling into corners of my life as though it were theirs to claim. The house felt louder, busier, and for a fleeting moment, I mistook the noise for comfort. I told myself it would be nice not to eat alone, not to carry every burden on my shoulders. But late that night, when I sat alone in bed, I replayed their words in my mind. Manage my finances. Such a curious phrase. It had the shine of concern but the shadow of control. My chest tightened with a feeling I could not name. Still, I silenced it, convincing myself that love sometimes wears strange clothes. I smiled as I drifted into sleep, but the unease lingered like a draft under a closed door. Little did I know, their idea of helping was the start of my worst nightmare. At first, their arrival felt like a blessing. I convinced myself I was lucky to have children so eager to step in, so willing to shield me from life's little troubles. But soon, their concern began to take a sharper shape. It started with my checkbook. My eldest son plucked it from the kitchen drawer one morning, smiling as though he were doing me a favor. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll handle this from now on. You shouldn't stress over numbers." His voice carried the softness of reassurance, yet his hand clutched the book too tightly, as if he were claiming territory. I laughed uneasily, telling myself it was nothing. After all, wasn't this what children did for aging parents, protect them from worry? But soon, they were standing beside me at the grocery store, peering into my cart with raised brows. "Do you really need that brand of tea?" my daughter asked, exchanging knowing looks with her brother. "It's expensive, and honestly, it's not good for your health." I felt like a schoolgirl caught stealing candy, my cheeks burning as I placed the box back on the shelf. I wanted to protest, to remind her that it was my money and my taste, but the words stuck in my throat. Their smiles were bright, but their eyes gleamed with superiority. The small indignities gathered quickly. They questioned the gardener's modest pay, scolded me for tipping the delivery boy, and even counted the apples in my basket as though my choices required approval. At first, I bore it with patience. I told myself they meant well. Hadn't I always prayed they would look after me? But each correction, each patronizing sigh, scraped away at my pride until my home no longer felt like mine. They began to speak of me as though I weren't there. "She forgets things," I heard my daughter whisper. "It's better if we take control." I wanted to shout that I was not forgetful, not helpless, not broken, but their words draped over me like a heavy shawl, muffling my voice. The patience I once prided myself on trembled under the weight of their disrespect. One evening, as I reached for my purse to buy a neighbor's handmade jam, my son gently pulled it from my hands. "No need, Mom. Save your money." His smile was wide, but there was no warmth behind it. Something inside me cracked then, not loudly, but like a hairline fracture that deepens over time. At first I thought it was love, but their smiles were only masks. It didn't take long before the cracks in their kindness began to show. What started as gentle suggestions soon turned into outright criticism. One morning, my daughter wrinkled her nose as she walked through the living room. "This furniture is so outdated, Mom. Honestly, it makes the house look depressing." I stared at the sofa I had chosen with my late husband, every cushion stitched with memories, and felt her words pierce deeper than she knew. "My son wasn't kinda. You're too old to be making big decisions," he announced casually over dinner, as though declaring the weather. His fork clinked against the plate, final and cold. The words stung, not because they questioned my age, but because they erased my worth. reducing me to a fragile relic sitting at the head of my own table. Then came the friends. They invited them over without asking me, ushering strangers into my home as if it were theirs. I stood in the corner, silent, while my children bragged about my savings, boasting of how smart they had been to step in before I mismanaged everything. Their laughter filled the room, drowning out my presence. I felt small, invisible, like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. I began to wonder if they even saw me anymore, or if I had become nothing more than a vault they were guarding, waiting for the right time to break open. Every chuckle, every sideways glance, every careless word layered over me like dust on forgotten furniture. I sat in my bedroom that night, listening to their voices echo from downstairs, and clutched the worn armrest of my chair. My heart ached, not from age, but from the sharpness of betrayal that was slowly slicing through me. If this was their love, I shuddered to think what their greed looked like. The night it happened was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles heavy after a long day. I had gone to bed early, or at least pretended to. My bones ached, not from age but from the constant weight of their voices pressing down on me. Sleep, however, would not come. Instead, I lay awake, listening to the faint hum of their laughter drifting up the stairs. Something in their tone prickled at me. It was not the warm, careless laughter of family, but sharp, calculating. I rose silently, padding to the top of the staircase, where shadows pooled against the walls. Their voices carried clearly from the living room. "Once we sell the house, we'll finally have enough to invest properly," my son said, his voice low but brimming with satisfaction. My daughter's reply was a cruel whisper. "Exactly. She doesn't need all that space anyway. Half the rooms just sit empty. We'll tell her it's for her own good, that she can't manage it anymore. She believe she always does." The word struck me harder than any blow could. My hands gripped the railing, knuckles white as though I might fall if I let go. They weren't talking about helping me. They weren't protecting me. They were circling like vultures, waiting for the moment to pick apart the life I had built with sweat, sacrifice, and years of quiet perseverance. My daughter laughed again, a brittle, careless sound. "And once the house is sold, we'll finally be able to use her money wisely. Honestly, she should be grateful we're doing this. Grateful." The word echoed in my chest like a cruel joke. Every sacrifice I had made, every meal skipped so they could eat, every hour worked so they could study reduced to a ledger they now sought to erase. For a moment, I could not breathe. My vision blurred, hot tears pooling as the weight of betrayal settled into my bones. This was not love. This was not family. This was theft, wrapped in the false ribbons of concern. But as the tears slid silently down my face, something inside me hardened. I straightened my back and let the anger take root where the hurt had lived. They thought I was weak. That age had dulled my wits and softened my resolve. They thought they could dismantle my life piece by piece, and I would simply smile and thank them. They were wrong. I returned to my room quietly, my heart no longer breaking but burning. Their betrayal was cold, yes, but it had sparked a fire within me. I would not confront them yet. No, that would be too merciful. Instead, I would plan, I would wait, and when the time was right, I would show them the cost of underestimating me. That night, I stopped being their mother. I became their opponent. The morning after their betrayal, I wore a different face. No longer the dutiful mother, eager to believe in her children's care. I became the quiet actress in my own home. I decided that if they saw me as weak, I would give them weakness. If they thought me foolish, I would hand them folly. At breakfast, I sighed heavily, pressing a hand to my forehead. "The bank made a mistake," I murmured, letting my voice tremble. "My pension was cut. I don't know how I'll manage." I caught the flicker in my son's eyes, disappointment, not concern. My daughter quickly masked her irritation with a tight smile. "Oh, Mom, don't worry," she said, though her tone had lost its sugar. "We'll figure something out." I watched them exchange glances, their eager plans deflating like air from a punctured balloon. Suddenly, my once precious savings weren't worth their late-night scheming. My purchases, once criticized, no longer mattered. They began to sigh when I mentioned bills, rolling their eyes when I asked about groceries. The mask of devotion was slipping, thread by thread. Some days, I pretended to fumble over numbers, squinting at receipts until they grew impatient. Other days, I spoke of empty accounts, of a future with nothing to leave behind. Each time, I saw the gleam of greed in their eyes dull into irritation. Their voices grew sharp, their laughter brittle. They had no interest in me without the promise of inheritance. I stayed silent, hiding my fury beneath layers of feigned confusion. It was not easy. Every cutting remark pressed against my pride, every sigh of theirs a knife in my chest. Yet I endured it, for every cruel word revealed who they truly were. They no longer even pretended to value me. They valued only what they thought I owned. The more I shrank, the more their greed stood tall. It didn't take long for their patience to wither once the illusion of money was gone. The warmth in their voices, once painted on with careful strokes, peeled away like cheap wallpaper. My son began snapping over the smallest things. Why hadn't I washed the dishes quickly enough? Why had I left a light on in the hallway? Why did I insist on heating the house too much when bills were already so high? My daughter, once sweetly hovering at my side, now avoided me altogether. She spent hours locked in her room, only emerging to sigh dramatically when I asked for help with groceries or company. "Honestly, Mom," she muttered one afternoon, "you've become such a burden." The word clung to the air like smoke, searing itself into my chest. Their resentment grew sharper by the day. No more gentle pats on the arm, no more syrupy reassurances. Instead, there were eye rolls, muttered complaints, and the careless cruelty of children who felt cheated. They hadn't come from me, they had come from my wealth, and now that I appeared to have none, I was nothing more than dead weight. I bore it silently, though not with defeat. Their cruelty no longer broke me. It revealed them. Every cold glance, every sharp word was proof that my love had never been enough for them. Not when measured against the shine of coins they could not grasp. And in that truth, I found something unexpected. Strength. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. While they sulked and snapped at home, I quietly wove my own plan. One morning, under the excuse of visiting an old friend, I walked to my lawyer's office. His face softened when he saw me, but I wasted no time on pleasantries. "I need everything protected," I said firmly. "My accounts, my house, my will, nothing in their hands." He nodded, listening as I laid bare the truth of my children's schemes. For the first time in weeks, I felt air fill my lungs without weight. Later, I met with my financial advisor, a man who had guided me through years of careful saving. Together, we shifted accounts, locked deeds, and tucked away assets where no greedy hand could reach. By the time I left, my future was safe. Yet when I returned home, I pulled my mask back on. I shuffled through the doorway with a weary sigh, muttering about misplaced receipts and dwindling funds. They barely looked at me, dismissing me as the fool they believed I was. I let them. Every insult, every sneer, only made my resolve sharper. At night, while they laughed bitterly downstairs, I sat in my room with a secret smile. They thought they had stripped me of power, but in truth, I was slipping it further from their grasp with every passing day. They thought they held the cards, but I was the one stacking the deck. The day of the gathering arrived, and my house swelled with the voices of cousins, nieces, and neighbors. I had baked bread that morning, the familiar scent weaving through the rooms, grounding me in memories of gentler times. My children, however, treated it as their stage. With exaggerated sighs and sly smirks, they began their performance. "She can't even handle her own bills anymore," my daughter declared loudly, ensuring every ear turned her way. "We've practically had to take over everything." My son chuckled, shaking his head as if the weight of me were his greatest burden. "She's broke now. Honestly, if we weren't here, I don't know what she'd do. It's pathetic, really." Laughter rippled among a few, uneasy and forced. My cheeks burned, but I did not flinch. Instead, I rose slowly, steadying myself with the calmness of a woman who had waited for this moment. "Broke?" I asked, my voice carrying across the room. "Is that what you've told them?" Their smiles faltered. I reached into the folder I had tucked beneath my chair and laid the documents on the table. Bank statements, deeds, proof of assets untouched and secured. Gasps filled the air as eyes widened. "I am not broke. I am not useless. And I am certainly not yours to manage," I said, each word deliberate, sharp enough to cut through their false narrative. My children stood frozen, their faces pale, their arrogance crumbling before the weight of truth. The relatives who had once chuckled now turned their gazes on them with thinly veiled disgust. Their laughter died in their throats, replaced by silence. The house was silent after the gathering, yet the air still pulsed with the sting of their humiliation. My children avoided my eyes, scurrying about as if tidying could erase the truth that had been laid bare. But I was done with silence. I had spent too long swallowing my pride, too long allowing them to chip away at my dignity. That evening, I called them into the living room. They stood uneasily, their faces drawn tight with shame. though not remorse. I looked at them not as the infants I once cradled, not as the children I had sacrificed for, but as strangers who had squandered the greatest gift I had ever given them, my love. This house is mine, I said firmly, my voice steady, and so is my life. You came here for money, but what you wasted was far more precious. You wasted me. They stammered apologies, desperate, hollow words tumbling out in broken tones. My daughter reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. My son's eyes darted with panic, searching for forgiveness that would not come. I fed you, clothed you, and built every stone of your future with my own hands, I continued, my voice rising with decades of unspoken hurt. And when I needed nothing but respect, you gave me greed. You will not live here another day. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of their shallow breathing. Finally, they gathered their things, muttering protests that fell flat against my resolve. I opened the door and stood tall as they stepped outside, no longer children of this home but trespassers expelled from it. As they walked out, I felt the house breathe again. So did I, when the door closed behind them. The silence that followed was not empty, it was liberating. For the first time in months, I could hear my own heartbeat without the drum of their demands drowning it out. I walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs still hanging proudly on the shelves. Every object whispered of my past, of the years I had built this home with care and sacrifice. And now, it was mine again. Not a cage where their greed proud, but a sanctuary reclaimed. I will not lie to you, the betrayal cut deep. To hear your own children dismiss you as a burden, to see their eyes glisten with desire not for your love but for your possessions. It is a wound that no paper or lawyer can mend. Yet wounds heal. They leave scars, yes, but scars are proof of survival. I carry mine openly now, not with shame, but with pride. For they remind me of the day I chose myself. My days have grown quieter, but not lonelier. I rise early to tend the garden, kneeling in the soil with the sun on my back, planting seeds that promise life, not bitterness. Flowers bloom under my hands, patient and vibrant, teaching me that beauty comes when we nurture with honesty, not when we demand with greed. Neighbors stop by with laughter and warmth. Friends bring loaves of bread or cups of tea. And together we share stories that remind me there is still goodness in the world. There are evenings now when I sit on the porch and listen to the wind. I laugh more sometimes with others, sometimes alone. I savor the taste of my favorite tea, the one they once told me was too expensive, and I let it linger on my tongue like a small rebellion, a quiet victory. No one checks my receipts anymore. No one questions my choices. Every decision, no matter how small, belongs wholly to me. I tell you this because I know I am not the only mother who has faced such shadows. We raise our children with hands that ache and hearts that hope, never imagining the day they might see us not as mothers, but as opportunities. To those who know this pain, I say, do not shrink. Do not surrender what is yours. Protect it, not out of spite, but out of love for yourself. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are dignity. Money can be stolen. Houses can be sold. But self-respect once claimed is untouchable. I had to lose my children's masks to find that truth. And though I grieve the love I thought I had, I rejoice in the strength I discovered beneath the grief. They came for my money, but I found something richer, my freedom.